To say that I'm obsessed with personal finance is an understatement, but I've struggled to find someone I can relate to who can provide sound money advice, partly because in generations past, my culture has frowned upon these types of discussions. The Check Your Money podcast was created in my quest to find a space of support and network of people just like me that want to grow financially. I'm excited to share ways you can improve your current and future financial health, set and meet money goals, and even plan for retirement in this ever-changing economy. I hope that by the end of this episode, you'll say to yourself at least once, I need to check my money today. Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of the Check Your Money podcast. I'm truly excited and honored that you've chosen to listen to me today. In this, my first episode, I want to share a little bit about myself, my journey, and my vision for this podcast. So, my name is Norma Vargas. I'm a 40-something Latina, part Ecuadorian, part Puerto Rican, and part Cuban. I am what you call a mutt. So in my culture, it was common practice, and still is really, not to talk about money. And when I say still is, I mean you don't talk about it with your parents. So the big question is, how can you advance if you can't even discuss it at home? I plan to cover so much more on this in future episodes. So again, let me tell you a little about myself. So I'm a mom of 2 college-age adults. One recently quarantined, graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and the other is going into his last year pursuing a bachelor's degree in digital media design. So my day job. By day, I'm an established telecommunications audit professional. Now, this is just a fancy way of saying I've been doing it for a long time. And as I tell my friends and family, I audit phone bills for big companies for a living. I've always been really good at finding my clients' network-related savings. And if I had to guess, I've got to be somewhere close to like $1 billion by now collectively over the course of my career. Let me explain how. So first of all, my clients include major and multinational banks, retailers, mortgage companies, just to name a few. So I provide savings by validating that they're paying their contracted rates for telecom services. I recommend contractual rates based on industry benchmarks, and that they're paying for the services they actually still need and use, locations that they're at, and whether there's a cost savings benefit to upgrade their technology. So I've been at this company for going on 16 years. I love my job. I love the company I work for. I love my boss. He's not a micromanager. I love it. And I've always been really passionate about finding savings for my clients. And of course, this is my personality. So, it's not just about what I do at work. This really does trickle into my personal life as well. So as far as my education, attending college for me was a given. It was as natural a transition as going to high school was. Where I went, though, was motivated by my high school guidance counselor. This was probably the first and last time I ever let someone I shouldn't have tell me what I was good enough for. So I was accepted into Seton Hall, among a few other schools, and there are 2 lessons I learned from this process. First, since I was going to be the first generation college student in my entire family, it meant I had no one to turn to for advice. My mom had pushed for Seton Hall, but I knew I didn't want to be in that much debt when I graduated, so I stood my ground on that one. I had no idea about scholarships or anything like that. So as I was discussing my options with my guidance counselor, and as I stated in my intro, you are not to discuss money. So I had to go to my guidance counselor and not talk about money. She says, with your grades, you might as well go to Ramapo. So Ramapo College of New Jersey is where I went. And that was okay. But I'll never forget that feeling of unworthiness. Just hearing the words, you might as well do ... It really does give you that empty kind of, okay, if that's what you think I should do kind of feeling. So I'm at Ramapo. My major is accounting. I've always loved numbers. And the only profession that involves numbers, to my knowledge at least, was accounting. Because again, nobody to talk to. So ultimately end up changing majors, which is another dumb story. But immediately after graduating college, Like the very next day, I got married. I had 2 children in 2 years, and I decided to be a martyr because that's what I was taught. And I skipped grad school, even though it was one of my goals. So I don't regret my choice one bit. But the second I felt comfortable, which wasn't until my daughter was starting college, I did the same. I'm proud to say that in December of 2019, I earned my master's in family and consumer science with the family financial planning specialization. So, enough of my resume. Um, I did something groundbreaking twice. So, in case you don't know, Latinos typically do not leave their nest. I've done it twice. So, I left New Jersey and moved to Connecticut, lived there for 15 years to raise my kids. The trees were nice. My mom was salty for a while because, like I said, Latinos do not leave. Groundbreaking move number 2. I decided to follow my heart. And from one day to the next, like literally, I didn't even really have time to say goodbye to anybody because I left so fast. I sold everything and whatever fit in my car came with me to Florida just a few months ago. No place to live. Stayed with a very generous sister friend until I could find a place, and I made it happen. Me fui solita, as my Ecuadorian grandmother would say. So, my money story. I've learned from so many along the journey of my life of what I did not want. And while I have quite a few stories to choose from, for my first podcast, I'm going to start with my first one. So as a kid, I was part of a dynamic where my mom paid the bills and my dad basically had what was left. He did the food shopping and I learned how to work the grocery store deals. He'd buy the limits, put them in the car, go back in, get more, and check out at a different register. We had like 42 of everything at all times. Lots of mixed vegetables. I never did without, ever. But this was at a cost. My mom held a full-time job and like 2 or 3 part-times. We were what I now know as house poor. But again, I didn't know this, but I recognize it now. So after their divorce, which happened when I was a senior in high school, I saw something very different. So my mom wasn't used to stocking up, and I had to learn how to cut toothpaste and use Kleenex in the bathroom. I don't think it was a money issue, but I'm not going to ask. But in my mind, I correlated divorce with destitute. And again, this is, my teenage mind. Now I think she just hated shopping and my dad wasn't there to do it. But my dad, on the other hand, now he doesn't have a house to pay bills for. So I bought everything and ate everything he wanted. Like shopping for him for Christmas was impossible. So we got him sweaters, lots of them, every year. He spent all he had, but I'm sure he died fulfilled. What I learned from this was twofold. So 1, I was never going to be left to cut toothpaste if I ever got divorced. And 2, if I want it, I'm going to buy it. Because damn it, I have a job. What this did, however, was make me both a saver and a spender. So how can you be both? Credit cards. I will leave you with that for now. All right, so just so you know, I do have another podcast. Currently the co-host of Finances and it's available on a few platforms with a former classmate from my master's program. In that podcast, we educate others on the concepts we learned in the program. And our tagline is, we went to school so you don't have to. Why start another? Because I'm an overachiever. Just kidding. I'm starting this because I began to feel a strong desire to connect with people who are like myself, my friends, my family. I started to really think about my personal money story and how I felt such a structured program was the only way I could learn how to handle my finances. And it taught me a lot. But I felt this because, as I stated before, in LatinX households, you're not supposed to talk about these private things. Not in the house and not out of the house. But I've since discovered that not only is there wealth of easily accessible information out there, but there are people with similar backgrounds as myself who get paycheck to paycheck reality and are fighting desperately to end that cycle. If I can help break that cycle for even just one person, then I can help pave the way to financial independence and give that person options. Because at the end of the day, having options is the most freeing feeling in the world, aside from not caring about how much you weigh. So, having said that, my vision for this podcast is as follows: no more crowd-funded funerals. It breaks my heart every time I see one of these come across my timeline. I think to myself, I have a policy where I pay $18.60 a month, $18.60 a month. That more than covers a funeral. If someone had only told this person that it's pretty easy to get a term policy, or maybe even if they had access to one through their job and just didn't take advantage of it, their family wouldn't have to be worrying about money and also trying to grieve at the same time. I can't even imagine how stressful it is. I also want to break the chains that have existed in women, minorities, and those who grew up with the paycheck to paycheck and just charge it as their reality. I want to create multi-generational wealth for those who have never thought of this as their reality. And by I want to create, I mean I want to show people how they can create this for themselves. I want to enable and equip you to make money decisions that'll help you and your families progress. I also want to expand your knowledge. I recently read in an article that female empowerment could be defined in 5 separate categories: social, educational, economic, political, and psychological. I want to explore all of this. So I want to have guests, and my guests will include, at least in my vision, relatable people who can help guide us by either showing us what to do or what not to do. Those who understand the culture, because it's so important, or have similar money stories and can be that imaginary soft pillow to land on when you're feeling like you want to level up, but need some emotional support to gather the strength to do it. But I also want to showcase people who are going through it right now, because let's face it, it's great to hear someone who climbed that mountain, but sometimes we want to chat with someone who's with us in our financial journey right now so we can say, oh, girl, me too. So did you notice I said we and us? I feel like we're always growing, learning, sharing. I've actually recently entered, in my mind, is this Instagram world where I've connected with several like-minded, mainly women. Even with my fancy degree, on a daily basis, I think, damn, that's a great idea. Every time I see somebody post something. And lastly, my goal is to help create money awareness. So ignorance is bliss, but it's not going to help you grow financially. Check your money. My closeout for each episode will be check your knowledge. Well, I'll share something I learned during the week. I also will use my Instagram platform, which is at checkyourmoney_podcast, to share, oh my God, I need to share this right now kind of stuff. So today's check your knowledge. What is LatinX? I actually just found this out recently and I'm loving the word. I'm so glad I discovered it. LatinX is a gender-neutral noun and adjective used instead of Latino or Latina to refer to people of Latin American cultural or ethnic identity in the United States. The X suffix replaces, the standard of O or A, the standard ending of O and A of nouns and adjectives that are typical, grammatical, gender in Spanish. So I love this word because it means so much more to me than what Wikipedia said, that I obviously just fumbled a little bit. But I feel this describes my generation and those to follow. Because as Latinos and Latinas, there is that set out your man's clothes and underwear for the day and serve his food because you don't let a man ever serve himself connotation. To me, LatinX represents, babe, thanks for the teamwork. I appreciate you. If you connected with me at all during this podcast, I don't have to explain those last two statements. Well, there you have my resume and my incredibly long elevator pitch. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll stay tuned for more. My goal is that at some point during this episode, you said to yourself at least once, I need to check my money today. You can find me on Instagram at checkyourmoney_podcast and on Facebook at checkyourmoney. Thanks so much for listening. The information provided in the Check Your Money podcast, associated social media accounts, and website is intended solely for the personal, non-commercial use of the user who accepts full responsibility of its use. While we have taken every precaution to ensure that the content of the aforementioned is both current and accurate, errors can occur. We accept no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content. The information provided by Check Your Money and its affiliated entities is general in nature, provided for educational purposes only, and should not be considered to be legal, tax, accounting, or investing advice. In all cases, you should consult with professional advisors familiar with your personal factual situation for advice concerning specific matters before making any decisions.